Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Marco Rubio, U.S. Senator.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, it's great to be back with CPAC out west here now. That's great. You know, I got, first of all, what is this? Is Obama speaking here today? Things are distracting me. Let me turn that around right there. All right. It's great to be here with CPAC and the American Conservative Union. You know, the American Conservative Union is one of the only unions in America that supported me. And so it's great to be here with you guys and to be a part of this. And so I don't know what you guys were doing last night. I was watching a pretty good debate. Here's what I loved about it. Here's what I loved about it. I think, you know, Mitt Romney won on every point you could win a debate on. But what was the most telling was not what he did, but what the president was doing. He was uncomfortable. He was uncomfortable talking about taxes. He was uncomfortable talking about the debt. At one startling moment, he turns to the moderator and says, can we change the subject? To what? What are we going to change the subject to? That's the central issue of our campaign. There's a reason why he was uncomfortable last night in that debate. And the reason why is because he literally does not understand the American free enterprise system. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't. He doesn't understand how jobs and prosperity are created. He doesn't understand what government's proper role in making that happen is. And so there's discomfort talking about it because he doesn't understand it. And because he doesn't understand it, he doesn't believe it. You have to understand, he's put in place these policies that all these professors told him would turn this country around. He should have talked to some history professors because those ideas have never worked anywhere they've ever been tried, ever. You want proof that those ideas of big government don't work? Here's proof. The millions of people that have come here from countries that have implemented them to get away from policies of big government. Because the great myth that they've perpetuated is the idea that somehow big government is good for the middle class. That big government is good for the people who are trying to make it and to get ahead. It's not true. In fact, in the words of the wise man Joe Biden, the last 4 years have buried the middle class because of big government. He's a wise and truth-telling man. They have buried the middle class because big government crushes the middle class. Big government crushes the working class. Big government crushes the people who are trying to make it. Big government doesn't hurt the people who have made it that much. They may not like it. They may understand how bad big government is for our society and for our economy, but they can afford to deal with it. You pass a bunch of laws and regulations, you make the tax code complicated, and multi-billion-dollar corporations and multi-millionaires and billionaires, they're going to hire the best accountants in America to figure out the loopholes, the best lawyers in America to navigate the loopholes, and if there's no loopholes, the best lobbyists in Washington to create them. You put government in charge of our economy, and they're going to hire lobbyists in Washington to get money from the government and laws from the government passed that help their business at the expense of others. That's why big government doesn't really hurt the people who have made it. They're going to figure it out one way or another. Mitt Romney made that point last night. Here's who gets crushed by big government. The people trying to start a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. The worker who wants to become the owner. The person who's saved for years because they have this really good idea and they want to take their life savings and use it to start a business. They're the ones that can't deal with these regulations. They're the ones that can't figure out the tax code. They're the ones that can't navigate big government and all of its complexities. And so they get hurt. And so that business never gets created. And so those jobs never get created. And so the middle class doesn't grow. And that's why big government fails the middle class and the working class. And that's why we have to get away from big government. And that's why in countries that have big government, the same people, the same companies, the same families dominate those nations and their economies generation after generation. But here, anyone from anywhere should have the opportunity to accomplish anything. We truly believe, as one of our founding principles, that you should be able to have the opportunity to go as far as your talent and your work will take you. Now, these aren't just economic principles that I'm talking to you about. These are moral principles, and they go to the very definition of who we are as a people and as a nation. Every country in the world has rich people. And unfortunately, every country in the world has poor people. But only America has been able to produce such a vast generational middle class time and again. Only in America have we seen so many people go from being an employee to an employer, from a worker to an owner. It goes to the very core of what makes us different and special and separates us from the rest of the world. And if we lose that, we lose one of the most important things that has separated us and made us different and made us better. And those are the stakes of this election. Because you cannot grow this middle class, you cannot make it safer, you cannot pull people out of poverty in an economy dominated by the government. It has never worked, and it will not work now. And if we go down that direction 4 more years, we will lose potentially many of the things that made America exceptional and different. And that would be a travesty. Because what was built here has changed the world. You know, in times like this, we would be wise to remember what the world was like before America. For almost 6,000 years of human history, almost everyone was poor. Only a handful of people were ever wealthy and powerful. And it was always the same people. In almost every society that's ever existed, the closer you were to government, the better off you were. And everybody else was on the outside looking in. For almost all of human history, your rights are what your leaders told you your rights were. What you got to do was whatever they told you you could do. Nothing really belonged to you, and your leaders decided what you were going to be. If your parents were poor, you would be poor. If your parents worked in a certain job, that's a job you would have as well. This was the condition of mankind for almost all of human history, almost 6,000 years of recorded history. That began to change 200 and some odd years ago, when on this continent, these extraordinary men wrote the words that said that every single person on the earth was created equal, because they were given at birth certain rights that came from God, not from government, not from their politicians, and not from their leaders. I was born here, so were so many of you, raised in a place where this has always been my reality. And sometimes when you haven't known anything else, it's easy to take that for granted. It's easy to say, well, yeah, of course our rights come from God. Everyone knows that. No, they don't. No, they don't. In fact, for almost all of human history, no one believed that. America has been the exception, not the rule. The freedoms, the liberties that we have, and our prosperity has been the exception, not the rule, throughout human history. And it did not happen by accident. It happened because those weren't just words on a piece of paper. They were governing, guiding principles from which we formed a republic of limited government, of divided power. A government that was limited because we believed that the role of government was not to tell us what our rights was not to protect us from each other or ourselves. The role of government was to protect our liberties that God had given us, to protect the rights that our Creator had endowed us with. And these principles also led us to form an economic system. It's called the free enterprise system. It's a system that's based on a simple notion that it doesn't matter where you started out in life. It doesn't matter if your parents were poor or even if you were poor. You can go as far as your talent and your hard work will take you. It doesn't matter if you're a worker. If your idea is better than your boss's and you're willing to take a risk, you can compete against them in the same industry and maybe even put them out of business because you're better than they are. It happens all the time. The idea and the belief that people should be able to open up a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. Yes, in violation of the zoning code, but you can do it. The belief, right. The belief that you could draw a business plan out on the back of a scrap piece of paper or a napkin, borrow money, max out your credit card, take your life savings, and open that business, and guess what? It works. The idea works. And all of a sudden, you go from 1 people to 5 people working for you, and then 10, and then 20, and then 50, and then 100. Within 10 years, you have 200 people working for you, 200 families that are being fed, 200 families that are making mortgage payments, 200 families that will send their kids to college. And they did it because they had confidence in the future, but because they had a government that made it easier for them to do that. Because we didn't have a complicated tax code or a tax code that was so burdensome or so expensive that people decided to leave their money in the bank, not to invest it. We had a regulatory code a regulatory code that wasn't so complicated that it cost millions of dollars or hundreds of lawyers to figure out. Instead, they said, you know what, we're going to invest in that economy because we believe that we can create jobs given these rules and this scenario. We had an energy policy that was pro-American that said, you know what, we're the most energy-rich country in the world. Why are we tying both hands behind our backs? And a government that gets rid of the crazy Obamacare law. There's no other way to describe it. It's a tax increase on the middle class. It's regulations all rolled into one. It's the most horrible idea that has emerged from the federal government since the previous horrible idea called the stimulus. Anyway. I guess I want to close by saying that I know that times are tough. I do. I know. I talk to people all the time. In this campaign, I've had a chance to travel the country and speak to people everywhere. Here in Colorado, all across the West, even in Florida, everywhere. And people will tell you, yeah, even in Florida, I get to stay some time there. I get to go home once in a while. And people tell me, you know, I've been looking for a job for 3 years. I went to school. I did everything they told me I had to do. I got good grades. I worked hard. Why can't I find a job? I bought a house, and now I can't sell it. It's worth half as much as it used to be. I have a business. I'm afraid to hire anybody because I don't know what Obamacare is going to mean to me. People are worried, and they're afraid that things will never be the same again. But the truth is, things don't have to be the same again. They can be better than they've ever been. There is no reason why 21st century America can't be better than 20th century America. There's no reason. There is no reason why our children and even us could be the safest and most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. There is no reason. All we have to do is change the people that are in charge, and it starts at the top, and it started last night, and I can't wait to come back to you to talk about President Mitt Romney. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.